We are recording, and this is the lovely Stella. How do you say your last name?
Perrett.
Perrett.
Perrett. Yeah, yeah.
I know about you and your work when I joined this whole rational revolution and your alligator image creeping into the newt, I guess it was Newt Pond, was like such a great summary of, I don't know, it was so impactful and it was just
Oh,
it was wonderful, and I was like, "Oh, this girl's kind of famous, and you've got quite the history." So I can't wait to hear all about your past and how you got involved
oh,
with cartooning. And I mean, I'd love to hear it.
that notorious cartoon. I'm glad you like it.
It's
Feminists
gorgeous.
like it, but the amount of abuse that it got, obviously, in the Twitter sphere at the time. Luckily, I'm not on Twitter, so
Hmm.
that didn't
Hmm.
affect me directly. All right, but it affected friends of mine. They were obviously upset, and
Hmm.
uh, I until I came on Spinster, I'd never been on social media in my whole life.
Oh wow! Oh my
So
goodness!
literally, I didn't do my first sort of podcast until the middle of last year. That was with Megan Murphy,
Oh,
and
excellent!
that was audio. That was on Feminist Current, and
Oh,
so yeah, it's my learning curve has been like that, Lindsay. I
hey,
just
you're here today. Excellent,
I've
making it work.
I've so I'm wearing my normal cap with the badges because people are recognising that cap now.
Oh,
So I'm happy to explain what the badges are if you're interested.
of course, absolutely. If you,
Yeah.
I
So
mean, yep.
okay. So this is a gay icon of the '60s, which is Dirk Bogart. He was gay actor, but never revealed that he was gay because in those
Hmm.
days, A, it was against the law, and B, Hollywood didn't like it. So he lived with a guy who was his manager for something like 30 odd years, and they lived abroad. They had to live abroad a lot. They lived in France, Italy, where it was more accepted,
Mm,
And
okay.
so he was a big gay icon. He made a film called Victim, which
Hmm.
was uh, had such an impact in Britain, such a hit in the cinemas. Nobody had television in those days. People queued up, went to the cinemas, and it
Hmm.
was such a hit that it impacted on changing the law on homosexuality, making it
Oh wow.
legitimate. Yeah. So he's a great gay icon. In the middle is my Resistors United sticker, which is a lesbian group, Resistors United. The little silver thing is the Free Speech Union pin, and the kind of the purple. That's a Remembrance Day badge, and that's for animals that are killed in war.
Oh
So
wow.
that's a nice thing to wear, So these are my badges.
That shows to me that you're a very caring person, and I mean, you stand for some wonderful things with that right there. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Well, I feel that all this has happened to me, and getting involved in rad feminism. It's like taking me back to my 20s when
Mm.
I was an activist and when I went on marches and didn't we all, when we were in, sorry, I'm speaking to you. I don't know
Oh
your age
no,
group, but
it's fine. I know what you meant. Yeah, I know.
you
I
know
want to
what I
hear
mean.
that. Like, you going through that. I guess you said in your 20s, and then I guess
Mm,
did it. I wouldn't say fizzle out. I can't imagine radical feminists ever having a place in their life where they are active and then they're not active and then active again. So I'm so curious to hear about your early activism and then how did
mm.
that play out to I guess now.
Yeah, like a lot of women, life got in the way. I had to earn a living. I
Mm-hmm.
had to work full time. I had to do that. And so although I might have been involved with it on the fringes, I've supported friends of mine when they've run for local council and things like that, and local politics and local activism. But I haven't. What I'm doing now is way way more than I was doing back then
Oh
because
wow.
I with the internet you've kind of got a global reach, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
It's not just like your own circle of little activist friends. It's and so yeah, I don't know how far back you want me to go, Lindsay. Do you want me to?
Whatever you want to share. I'm just curious. Like,
Mm-hmm,
well,
mm-hmm.
you just said something that was pretty telling that you're doing more activism than I guess maybe you ever expected to do, and I mean that's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
telling to how severe the current state of the world is, which is really for me upsetting because I sadly don't know a lot about feminism and the history of it. I'm still learning along the way, And it seems like to me in the past, I don't even know, 60s or whatever years were pretty significant activism. So it's kind of terrifying to hear that now is more like than ever. You know, I've heard women that
Well,
are older than me be like, this is something I never expected to happen. I've
yeah.
never seen misogyny like this. And I'm like, oh, great. What a time to be alive. It's just, it's upsetting. But also
Well,
very, you know, empowering to meet all these women I would
is
never
it
had the chance to meet. It's
is
incredible.
it the Chinese that say we live in interesting times? You know, so whichever era you're campaigning in, that will be what you feel is the most, you know, where you're most passionate. So in my 20s, that was in the early 80s, start of Spare Rib. I was actually working in London, so I actually met people that were involved in setting up Spare Rib at the time.
What's spare
Oh, sorry, Spare Rib's a
rib?
very famous British feminist newspaper that started in the very early 80s, and women coming together and this amazing newspaper. All the issues are online now in an archive, which is amazing.
Wow.
And it was it was full of cartoons, and I was very outrageous at the time, you know, lesbians, everything, you know. So Spare Rib was just starting. We were in the middle of the AIDS crisis, so women were campaigning on behalf of gay men, and obviously donating to all gay causes and trying to support them whichever way we could. So it was lots of activism going on in those days, you know. There was horrible things happening. There was a serial murderer in Britain called the Yorkshire Ripper, which Julie Bindel has written about a lot. And women went on marches, reclaimed the night marches, to show that they weren't afraid of, you know, male violence. So all this was going on at the time. It was very exciting, you know. And it was, you know, then we had the Mrs. Thatcher era, so people were campaigning about that, and it was just lots of stuff. And, you know, that was so amazing time. And but in terms of your reach, you could only reach as far as your local area because the internet wasn't there.
Right.
It's hard to remember back before the internet. As an artist, what you had to do in those days to get your art out there was, you know, send things away in the post. I mean, literally, and wonder if you were ever going to get acknowledged or have it back or anything, you know. It was, so how I got involved with art and illustrating books and things was I joined little clubs like science fiction clubs and book clubs, and we would meet up in real life, you know, and you gradually increased what you were doing that way. Very, very different to today. And then, you know, it's hard to imagine. Nobody today can imagine back what it was like before mobile phones or anything, you know.
I remember a little bit, yeah. I mean, it's word of mouth and makes sense getting connected with local groups and whatnot. Has your art, do you think your art is controversial, or would you call it that? Has it always been that, basically?
Certainly not back then. I was illustrating people's small books, magazines, science fiction, fantasy, children's books. And I went on doing that in a very quiet sort of way, you know. And then 2015, and lots of things started happening around 2015. There was trans activists started agitating to reform the Gender Recognition Act in Britain. And but also 2015 had a big impact on artists because we had the Charlie Hebdo massacre in Paris.
That's right.
And we had that was several very elderly, defenseless men and women in their own office, in their own editorial office, which the attackers knew that they had an editorial meeting on a certain day every week, and came in the building and actually were very they knew very distinctive about who they were actually targeting. They knew all the names. They knew who they were going to target. They even asked when they came in, "Who are you? Are you part?" You know, they were identifying who they were going to target. So there was a lady who let them in. She was one of the cartoonists. They did not shoot her. They actually said, "We are not here to attack women." They actually told her, but they obviously she was terrified, and she let them into the building at gunpoint. You know. So and then when they got in up to where the office was, they just basically they called out each person's name before they shot them. Assassination, it wasn't random in any way. And one of the cartoons, one of the women there, she wasn't a cartoonist. She wrote a column for Charlie Hebdo. She was actually a psychiatrist, and she was in her sort of 70s, and she was killed as well. So these people were defences. That had such a huge impact around the world. And
I heard about it briefly, but I didn't know the whole. I guess the whole story. Just because I guess
to me as a cartoonist, it was a really devastating thing. And so you had people wearing little T-shirts and badges that said "Je suis Charlie, I am Charlie" in support. There was also a contingent of what we would now call trolls on the internet who laughed about it and said, "Oh yeah, these people deserve to die because it was because it was an anti-Islam newspaper, which is absolutely right. In fact, Charlie Hebdo is anti everything. They have a proud history of poking fun at every type of authority."
Oh, of course.
And they always have done,
He or it was a he. I'm like so clueless, sadly. I mean, I remember hearing the name. I just didn't look into it at the time, just because I don't know, honestly. I knew it was a cartoonist, but I don't remember, because it's, what year was that again? I don't remember what.
2000. It was January 2015.
Okay.
And it was because of these Mohammed cartoons.
Okay.
Which actually Charlie Hebdo hadn't originated with Charlie Hebdo. They originated in Denmark with a newspaper 3 or 4 years before that. So Charlie Hebdo were reprinting something that had already been out there in the public. And you know what France is like. We had a teacher in France murdered only last October for the same thing, for showing the same cartoons to his civics class.
Really? It was the same Explain that to me.
Same cartoons.
Because it might be the thing that I heard about. I don't know what it's about.
Samuel Paty, and the whole of France came to a standstill last October. They made him a Legion of Honor after his death, and the Prime Minister of France giving the eulogy at his funeral and everything, and that was for the exact same cartoons. So this thing with these Mohammed cartoons has gone on for years and years and years.
I remember hearing about that a while ago.
So as a cartoonist, obviously I follow this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So my involvement now in the Radfem world is an extension of my interest in free speech and free expression. So it's so 2015 was an eventful year for that, and that was when I got involved with the Morning Star. I just started randomly sending them stuff, and I became their regular cartoonist.
What is Morning Star?
For the next 5 years. It's the only communist daily newspaper in Britain.
Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. So and I became. They have a good reputation for supporting women, pushing women artists forward. They don't pay anybody, but that's part of their thing. And they are not recognised as a newspaper in the newspaper industry because they are linked to the Communist Party, right? So they are, but nevertheless, they have a good reputation for supporting women artists and supporting women's rights and freedom of speech. Yeah. So that's why what happened with my cartoon came as a shock, I think, to a lot of people, a lot of their readers. A lot of the women's rights groups that are connected with the Morning Star, and obviously to me, because I haven't had anything like this happen to me before with any of my cartoons. I haven't actually got the cartoon behind me. That's my book up there on the banner. I thought about this, Lindsay, and I thought, well, a lot of people have seen the cartoon now. It's been on podcasts. You've only got to Google cartoon Morning Star and it's still out there, so it's easy for people to find. I've told the story now about what happened with the Morning Star a few times, so I don't know how much detail you want me to go into.
I probably don't even know it. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear it. If you want to, it's up to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll try and be quick for those people who've heard about it already. So I used to just send the cartoons in. If they used them, they used them. If they didn't, they didn't. And then you just went on to draw the next thing, right? So the this particular cartoon was about the proposed changes to the Gender Recognition Act. And I mean, you couldn't get a more literal cartoon. You've got these little newts in the pond. It's a safe women's space. It's a women's swimming session. And you've got a male predator trying to come in. And that's all it is. It's a literal example of what could happen.
Yeah.
If this had gone through. That's literally all it was. And, you know, it created, I mean, nobody's ever seen anything like it. The Morning Star has been going for 70 years, and they have never backed down from an editorial decision before. They've never been pressurized in this way before. And they've done some pretty controversial things in their time, you know, but this had never happened to them before. And the pile-on was pretty unbelievable. I didn't know about it because I was working full-time, and I didn't know about it for about a few days, I suppose. And one of my union colleagues, because I was a union rep, because people seem to think that this happens to people from the right. No, this is happening from people who are very involved in the left, you know.
Yeah.
So I was a union rep. I mean, yeah, I was a hardworking union rep, and my speciality was supporting apprentices at work, you know. So one of my union colleagues came up to me and said, "My goodness, one of your cartoons has caused a right stink at the Morning Star," and we were laughing about it, you know. Oh, what now, you know? And I didn't know what he meant. I had to Google it myself to find out what was going on. They had not contacted me in any way. They didn't tell me this was happening. And I had to try and reach out to find people to support me. I had to put the pieces together. I didn't know what had happened.
Yeah. When did you put that out? Like, what was that last year? Like, when was that?
February, yeah. Almost exactly a year ago. February 2020, yeah.
Oh my God.
And so I had to piece together what had happened weeks and months later. First of all, they cancelled me completely. There was no communication, nothing. My own union. My own union sent me a disciplinary letter, which is basically leading to dismissal, saying because of this cartoon that was in the Morning Star. So that was trans activists within the union trying to push me out of my own union. And and that, bearing in mind that this would have then become public knowledge at my work, because what I did at the Morning, drawing for the Morning Star is my hobby, you know, nothing to do with my work, nothing to do with my union work, nothing. So my union secretary, who's an absolute old school, nearly 6-year-old guy, he said immediately, "We will support you, we will represent you," you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And I said, "What, you mean against our own union?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "I can't
Can you describe what a union is? I'm clueless over here. I have an idea, but...
Are you in America or Canada, Lindsay?
America.
You're in America, yeah. You don't seem to have them in the same way that we do. I noticed that, is it Google or Amazon that are having a big fight at the moment about union representation at work? It might be Amazon, yeah. You don't seem to have them so much. You seem to go from one job to another, like what we call the gig economy, without any protection at work.
Okay.
Whereas we've grown up with the trade union movement, you see. We've had it for, a couple of 100 years. And we're used to it. It's embedded in all our workplaces. Unions are recognised pretty much everywhere.
So it's just to protect you in your...
Support you with, support you if you're going to be dismissed or anything goes wrong between you and management, you know. Okay. So everybody takes it for granted in Britain, you know. And, well,
I've heard of
you can imagine
like
how...
in Hollywood, but yeah, that's the only thing I've heard about. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what else
we
America
have...
has that, but Hollywood and actors...
No, we have them in all our work. Pretty much all workplaces recognise unions, right? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, and I said I cannot have my colleagues dragged into this because although this was supposed to be an internal union disciplinary thing, the fact that it was so controversial, I mean, it would have been leaked just like that.
It was just that one image.
One cartoon, yeah, and it would have been leaked just like that, and they would have been dragged into it, and they would have been attacked on Twitter, and their names would have been dragged through the mud. I couldn't afford to have that happen to my colleagues. You're not going to drop your own colleagues in that, are you, like that? So, because I'd already been planning to retire early from work, it basically pushed me into jumping before I was pushed, you know. So that was unfortunate that happened that way. I mean, it was a traumatic time in my life. I was going through a lot. You know, I'm a carer for my husband, and that was all happening at the same time as well. So there was a lot going on. It was pretty traumatic. Anyway, so I had to reach out and try and find support where I could find it. So I went to a thing called the Free Speech Union, which is brand new. It's been set up to support people like me that fall foul of the cancel culture.
Oh my goodness! When did that start?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
2000 late 2019. So that's pretty new as well.
Excellent.
And that's in response to cancel culture. That's because of the cancel culture.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Like, shining light through the dark clouds.
And of course, because they support women and because they support people, they get accused of being called right wing and everything, you know. But anyway, so what they did was they threatened the Morning Star with a defamation action. And I made some demands so that we wouldn't go ahead with defamation. And one of my demands was a private apology for how they treated me. Because, you know, you don't want to be treated like that after 5 years when they've been calling you their star all that time. And the other thing my other demand was that they printed a right of reply because they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't have me back in the newspaper, you see. And none of this was their fault. They were pressurized by the unions.
Yeah.
No, by the trans activists who are embedded in the unions, I should say.
Yeah.
Because all the unions have been captured just like everything else. And they were forced to do this. They were coerced. They were told they would be defunded if they did not cancel me, if they did not apologize.
That classic thing that they just dangle this over people's heads.
Yeah,
I think they do that everywhere.
And then the ramifications were widened, that it wasn't just me, that they couldn't print anything about women's rights unless they also printed stuff about trans activist rights. So this is what happened to them. So it wasn't really their fault, you know, and the editor offered to resign and everything, you know, it wasn't really their fault. And this is my book behind me. And in the book, I've got a thank you page, and right at the top, I've got their names. And I said, look, you know, thank you. I know it wasn't your fault, you know, because it wasn't. And they were the victims of the cancel culture as well, the same as me, if you see what I mean.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but that, of course, made me notorious as this transphobic cartoonist.
Well, are you transphobic?
This was one cartoon about the issue of reforming the GRA. The only cartoon on that subject I'd done for the Morning Star in 5 years. Wow. And, you know, since then, because I've had such a welcome in the Rad Femme world and such a lot of support, I've done some more on the subject. Why wouldn't I? But at the time, it was the only one I had ever done. So it was totally disproportionate, the reaction. Of course, I wasn't allowed to have my right of reply in there, and I still haven't been. And what I have done instead is it's been published on women-friendly websites instead. You know, and
what was the Gender Recognition Act that they wanted to change? What was it?
Well, we've already got this. This came in 2004, and this basically people who are changing sex. And let's be honest, this is mostly men. The majority was men at the time that this act came in. It was mostly older men. It wasn't like it is now with all these young girls. So they can get a certificate which proves that they've been through hormones and so on. So that they're legally a woman. And but that isn't good. So although they've got a whole act of parliament to themselves over and above all the equality protections the rest of us have already got, this wasn't good enough. So they were still campaigning to make it even more like easy to get these certificates. Because at the moment, I think they have to live in their preferred gender for 2 years or something. So I don't know what it's like in America.
That? I don't understand that. How do you actually prove that? Like, do you take a photo every day? Like, can't you just be like, I swear I was doing this? I don't understand how you prove I've been living as what you wore a dress every day. I don't get it.
Yeah, I suppose they have to show that they go to their regular employment. dressed
Oh,
as they,
okay. What are
you
they
know,
doing on the
and
job? I have so many questions.
well,
It's
yeah,
just so dumb.
well, this is it, and it's all just completely airy fairy, isn't it? You know.
Mhm.
Anyway, so
Yes.
they were trying to make it this act even more liberal to what they want, so that they wouldn't have to live for this certain period, that they could just self ID with hardly any, not even like from a doctor or anything, you know.
Yep.
So women were up, women, this all blew up. Women were up in arms about it. Women's groups were trying to have meetings. The meetings were being harassed and picketed, and you've probably seen some of the videos of those early meetings where women got, you know, hordes of people outside, venues got threatened, you know, all this. So it was really becoming in the news, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was because it was in the news was why I noticed it and why I did the
Yeah.
cartoon at all. Because as a political cartoonist, you're not just doing things at random.
What I say is give them an inch, they won't even run
Yeah.
a mile. They won't stop running.
Well, you know, we've now in the last couple of months, we have now got campaigns going on to repeal the Gender Recognition Act, not to reform it in their favour, to actually do away with it. And I'm saying openly now that I'm in that camp. Yeah, I support repealing it. Because they, you know, people who call themselves trans, they already have all the protections in the Equality Act that we've all got anyway. They already have all the other protections in law, protections against stalking, harassment, just like everybody else does. You know, that they do not need this extra act of Parliament just for them. And look at the divisiveness in society that it has stirred up.
Huge.
You know, I have never seen anything like this, you know. And like I said, I was active as a, you know, a bit of a campaigner in a small way back in the days of the AIDS crisis. We've never, in those days, people were coming together, you know. Campaigners from all kind of walks of life were coming together over the AIDS crisis, and now it seems to be everybody's in their own little ghettos. And so, so what you're asking is, you know, this obviously led to me being much more active. I felt this has all happened to me. Once you've been cancelled, what else can happen? You know?
Exactly. It's kind of
That's
freeing,
it.
really.
You've been cancelled. What else can happen? Yeah, what else can happen? So you might as well chuck yourself into it, mightn't you? And, you know, do what you can to support other people.
Blessing in
You know.
disguise.
Well, I mean, you know, yes. Last year, all this happened to me. And this year, I'm going to make this the year that I get involved in as many campaigns as I can and use my artwork, you know, to support other people. So I've already started doing this. We've got a campaign group called Keep Prisons Single Sex. And I've done them some T-shirt designs.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've done them. I've done them.
Yeah, I've seen those.
No, I've done them some T-shirt designs, which have only just come out on their website. And so hopefully they'll be able to sell them, and that will help them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I've done. So this is what I want to do. I want to use my artwork to support campaigns that will support women, you know, and individual women who are speaking out.
Oh yeah.
So I've had some of my artwork on Uncommon Ground Media for some quite famous people, Julia Long and people like that, and illustrating their articles, and that's what I want to do, you know, and also gay and lesbians, because this trans ideology is just trying to wipe them out of history. You know, not just medically transition the kids, but wipe them out of their own history.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking at prominent gay men and prominent lesbians and saying, no, they were trans. It's crazy, you know. And it's very upsetting, especially to those of us that lived through when the AIDS was going on.
Oh yeah.
You know, when we saw what was happening to people. And now, well, that's all just being negated. It's almost like, no, some of these men and women were not gay or lesbian at all. They were trans, apparently. I mean, isn't that insane?
They're saying that about the, like, historically, like, people in the past were
they're
just making it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
you only
famous
have to
gay
start
people? Like who
Googling.
were?
Yeah,
What?
well, yeah, people that have
Huh.
been written about, you know. I mean, one of my favourite characters from history, well, gay history, is Billy Tipton, who was a band leader in the 50s and 60s, jazz bands,
Mm.
in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And Billy Tipton was a lesbian
Mm.
who passed for a man because in those days, women
Mm.
were not on the stage in the bands.
Yeah.
They might have been a singer in a frilly dress out front, but they weren't the actual musicians, right?
Right.
And things like the musicians' union didn't like letting them in, this
Mm.
sort of thing.
Mm.
So to be in her chosen profession, and she was a jazz pianist, she passed as a man, but her family and her friends and her close acquaintances all knew that she was a woman and a lesbian, you know. And yet now the whole nice book has been written about her called Suits You, the double life of Billy Tipton, and it's a lovely book.
Mm-hmm.
And her relatives and are still alive, you know, and they're telling this lie about her that she wasn't a lesbian, she was trans.
What? That's
And this is the sort of thing that is going on, and it's terrible, you know.
why do they have any business doing that? It's just absurd. And I've been hearing about them trying to change history, or even with like Disney movies or Matilda. It's just like, and I read it, I'm like, oh, it's just Tumblr silly fan fiction. I didn't realize that
No,
they're like
no,
literally trying to change. I mean, I'm literally obviously
no.
not surprised. It's just absurd. You can't.
Well, it's not absurd. It's a deliberate strategy
Oh, of course.
to
Yes.
to to yeah, to wipe
Hmm.
women out, lesbian women out of history, especially lesbian women,
Yeah.
but quite a lot of gay men as well. I mean, look at Ellen Page, or Elliot as she is now, and they've already started changing all the movies that she was in the past on the streaming services and putting her new name, yeah, on there as if she never had a previous name.
It's
Um,
just it's so silly. It's like
this is actually changing history. This is actually trying to change history. I mean, films are a very important social documents.
yes,
You know, they're
yes,
very
yes.
important social documents.
Mm-hmm.
You watch a film that, you know, from previous years, you see all the old cars, the old buildings. You know, it's how people behaved, the language people spoke to one another,
Mm-hmm.
which might now be considered offensive. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was natural at the time.
natural.
And
Yep.
this is all being, yeah, trying to be censored out of history, isn't it? All this.
It's ridiculous. She's totally been captured by the cult. Like her little writing coming out thing, which first of all, she just wrote it. Like, how convincing is that? There wasn't a video because when she came out as a lesbian, I think it was at the HRC banquet or something. You know, it was a very passionate speech, and she was speaking and being filmed, and you can still look it up to this day.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I saw it, I'm like, I'm not buying it. It's I'm like, oh, I just realized all these things are connected. I'm like, HRC is some sort of cult or been captured by the lobbyists. And just so very clear she's been paid off or coerced. And she's so not mentally stable. I've seen interviews of her before she even announced that. And it's really sad. It's really sad. This whole thing is capturing like the most vulnerable. It's really
Yes.
horrifying. It's so sad. And
Well,
convincing,
you
I don't
know,
know.
luckily we have some very active groups who are fighting all this, don't we? And
Mm-hmm.
which women have had to do. Women have had to come together and form these campaign groups.
Yep.
You know, say off the top of my head, some like Posy Parker in Britain standing for women. You've
Mm-hmm.
probably got her. You might have some of her stickers and things.
Mm-hmm.
You
Save
know,
Women's
and
Sports,
Save Women's
UK
Sports
Prison,
Track.
something. I can't remember.
Yeah, transgender trend who have been
Mm-hmm.
brilliant with the schools. You
Mm-hmm.
know what's going on in the schools, and of course the Women's Human Rights Campaign, and it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, got quite a long list of really, really, really good campaigning organisations now.
Yeah.
Um,
Evidence and
the
receipts and
problem is that it seems to be that it's a very small collective of women, kind of spread worldwide.
mm-hmm.
Somebody said to me, you could count them up, only a couple of hundred women worldwide, and it's the same women
Mm-hmm.
coming to the different Zoom meetings and webinars and things. It's the same people, and
Right.
you can see that yourself because you see the same people popping up in the chats.
Mm-hmm.
that you've seen in another one, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I went on the Women's Human Rights Campaign Australia webinar, which was great fun, you know, really, really interesting women on there. And the same people were coming up in the chats that had been on the UK one, you know, so it's quite obvious that now that's a strength, but it also means, are we really reaching out to the ordinary women in our local areas, in our local neighborhoods, in our real lives, who don't know much about this?
Exactly. Yeah.
And who don't really understand.
We're being removed and canceled, and articles are being deleted. It's really hard to get it out.
Yeah.
And honestly, all this madness, once I realized it was really subtle, you know, I never believed the trans ideology, but I just came to, and it's, you know, a lot of this has made women become radical feminists, because I would have never considered that until I'm like, what is this shit? Like, what? And I was just like, I'm not buying it. And then I'm like, oh, I'm a radical feminist. Let's go. Like, they've convinced more people basically to become feminists because, yeah.
Right. Well, obviously with me, my journey to it was from opposing the attacks on free speech and free expression.
Yeah.
The trans ideology is an extreme example of the cancel culture. Fanatical Islamism is another one, you know. What's going on with the fanatical BLM activists is another one. And, you know, so they all facets of the same cancel culture. I wouldn't point, trans ideology is affecting half the human race. It's a biggie. It is a biggie, that's for sure. But it's still can't be seen in isolation. It's part of the rest. It's part of the attack on free speech generally. And this is why I feel it's so important. Now, other women have said this, not just me. This is why it's so important that we reach out to women from all political backgrounds.
Yes.
And, you know, all faiths and none, as it were. And it doesn't matter. To me, I've said this on a podcast before. To me, it doesn't matter if I'm talking to a woman, she's got different views to me on climate change and how to deal with it, or different views to me on law and order. That doesn't matter to me. I could not care less about that. What matters to me is she centering the fight against violence against women and girls worldwide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
and not just sitting there saying, oh, you know, I'm all right. Well, this has nothing to do with me. I can't see this in my own life. Oh, you know, I'm living quite a comfortable middle-class life here, you know. In the middle of all these lockdowns and things, we've still got a roof over our head. We don't have to walk 5 miles to get water. We don't have women in our family suffering FGM. Do you know what I mean? We are living privileged lives, and it's our duty, because we've got those freedoms of speech, to fight for the freedom of speech, to speak up for women all over the world. You know, anybody who says this doesn't affect them, they are. It's kind of I suppose they're protecting themselves, but at this stage in history, if you're not going to stand up for women and girls, you might as well just we don't even want to hear from you, you know, just go away, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been saying, you know. I used to be like, you know, I understand you have a job and you got to feed your family, but I'm like, it's coming to a crucial time where, and it's unfortunate because this whole thing has, you know, taught people to be living in fear because, oh, if I speak out, I'm going to lose my comforts and my family and my job and my friends. I'm like, we're over here. We've already lost all that. Like, first of all, it's incredibly freeing to
that's right,
not live in that fear anymore, even if that does happen, and it likely will happen. But it's just so.
I saw that you had Jennifer Billick on your show as well, and she's absolutely great. And what she's done with the 11th Hour blog, she's opened a lot of people's eyes, men and women. Amazing. You know,
yes,
yeah, fantastic. Men and women, yeah. And she was on. Yeah, she was on another webinar yesterday, Sunday, based in Britain, called Object, and they'll be putting that up on the website as well, on YouTube. Yeah, and she was on that, and people look at what she says and what she writes, and I'm sure a lot of people think how can this possibly be, this like worldwide conspiracy? And a lot of people think, oh, it's just too insane, it can't possibly be,
Conspiracy,
but
fear monger. Someone said to me fear mongering, and I'm like, okay. You just don't want to believe, I guess. I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I don't know. When I read it, I was like, yes. I had no
well,
doubt.
you know what they say, you just because you're paranoid, they could still be coming to get you. It's like, and
Yeah.
it is kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because people think of this as a mad conspiracy theory doesn't mean it isn't true. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And if anything, I would say about Jennifer, and I talked to her directly, by the way. I'm not speaking behind her back. If anything, she's not going far enough with it. She's investigated the where the money all comes from, and this network of sort of companies and organizations, and where it's all come from, and she's done fantastic work. And the Denton's document, we probably wouldn't know about a lot of this actually if it wasn't for Jennifer.
True.
And how she's been liaising with everybody and explaining all this. But the one crucial question, it's easy to say this is a big pharma pushing it, and this is this and this is that. But the one crucial question is why elected governments of democratic countries have gone along with it. That is the crucial question, because if all it was look at Australia. Australia just told Google where to get off actually, and said no, you've got to pay the news companies for the content. Bye bye Google, otherwise, and Google have caved, right? So it is possible for an elected government to push back against these big companies. But why haven't they done it with the trans issue, right? Why is it that this is being bulldozed through all our institutions across the Anglosphere, and now apparently in other countries like South American countries as well? Why is it there's a bigger reason than it's just big pharma? I'm sorry, there's a bigger reason, and I've been trying to join the dots a little bit with things I've said, that it's no surprise that the climate change agenda has grown up at exactly the same time as all this, because the climate change agenda also targets the youth, and it also tries to say to the youth, you haven't got a future. The world's going to come to an end in your lifetime. So there's no point in having children. And we don't want you to have children anyway, because we need to depopulate the earth. Right. So that agenda has been going on at exactly the same time as all this. Wow. And some governments would have latched onto that and thought, oh yeah, right, well, well, this is one way to do it, isn't it? Which sounds awfully callous, but governments in the Anglosphere were pushing eugenics in the early 20th century quite openly. Eugenics was a popular thing in the UK, in America. Germany actually only went down that road because they knew the other Anglosphere countries would not push back at them over it. And that is part of history, right?
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that eugenics is rearing its ugly head again, right? And transing the gay away, and that is eugenics by another name, I'm afraid. We've got to call these things what they are, Lindsay.
Yeah, I agree.
We can pussyfoot around this. We can't pussyfoot around it.
There's no time for that. I totally agree, 100%.
That's why Jennifer calls it the 11th hour, isn't it? We are at the 11th hour. But even going further, right? Even going further than that, if you're saying to everybody that the world is going to be uninhabitable in your lifetime, or uninhabitable in the nice parts of the world, so that millions of refugees are going to try and pour into your bit, right? The elites, they are looking for a way of escape, aren't they? They want somewhere to go to protect their own families, their own children, hang the rest of us, and the rest of us can go hang. And Transhumanism is all linked up with the space race, Lindsay. It's all linked up with space colonies and all the rest of it. Now, some people are going to say, "Oh, that's a step too far, Stella. That's too fantastic to even think." Are you kidding?
I don't think so.
Are you kidding? We have been told for the last few years that the world's going to end in our lifetime. The elites are not going to take us with them. They are looking for a way out for them and their families, so that their families can continue, right, in safety somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And transhumanism is all part of that plan. AI and robot servants, and you don't need all these people on the earth. You're going to need some around to do the basic growing food for them, but you don't need the massive amount we've got now. And it's they haven't got the political will to sort the problems out that are here on this planet.
Okay.
They haven't got the political will. I've got friends who are in the green movement, right? It's all doom and gloom and doom and gloom, right? There's no governments of the world uniting and saying, right, we need to literally go. We all need to pour our resources into Siberia and capture all the gases that are escaping out of the permafrost and use it as fuel. And the whole top of the world is, the bits that are Arctic now. Well, the ice is going to go, isn't it, right? So that whole top part of the world, that's going to become habitable. Yeah, we need new cities up there. That's where the refugees can move to. That would take a political will, which they haven't got, because that would mean governments of the world working together. They'd have to work with Russia, wouldn't they? You know what I mean? They're not going to do that. They haven't got the will. They would rather take the wars we've had for forever out into space and carry on their petty wars out in space on the moon and Mars.
Oh my God.
Do you see what I mean?
Of course
they have not got the political will to sort out the problems of this planet. So their answer is to abandon the rest of us and push forward on this inhuman. So that's where I think Jennifer hasn't actually. I think she's reluctant to speak about that because it sounds so.
Exactly. I'm like, people are already calling it. I don't care because I believe it, but yeah, it's just people, I guess, just aren't able to piece it all together.
Well, to me, nothing else makes sense as to why all the governments would be agreeing with it, right? Nothing makes sense. If it was just the big tech companies, if it was just big pharma, there would be a democratic pushback against it. But there isn't. It's all completely accepted. So it's erasing women from basically even being able to discuss what women are. Because in the future that they are envisaging, women are either just going to be just kind of drones, just kind of doing the dirty work, which they've done throughout history anyway, or they're going to have AI and kind of robots, and they will be producing children artificially, and they won't need women. Do you see what I mean?
Of course,
it's probably too much for people to get their heads around.
I don't want to believe it.
But,
it sounds like a science fiction novel. I mean,
But that's where we are. Elon Musk, in 2 weeks before the American election, beginning of November, 2 weeks before, when all the news media were looking at the American election, he sneaked out a press release where he said that when he sets up his moon colony, he will not abide by any rules, any laws that have been made on Earth, that they will create their own laws. And that press, I'm sorry, but they're blatantly saying these things.
Yeah, shamelessly.
Because, you don't want inconvenient laws like health and safety or, women's equality or anything like that getting in the way of what you want to do you, And they're openly saying these things. And, it's people, and what people might think what I've just said is crazy, but they are openly saying these things.
Not at all. I fully fucking believe it. I mean, it's just, gives you chills.
People think it's funny. People think it's funny that Saudi Arabia made a robot a citizen. They think, oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it funny?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, it's just a joke. Oh, this funny robot, that doesn't
Yep.
even look like a person. But that's just a way of kind of like softening us up for what's going to come.
Exactly. Or someone married a sex doll. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, why would I not believe it at this point, honestly? Um,
And all this stuff, the transgender is part of transhumanism. It's part
of
of it,
course.
and all these unfortunate people, these poor young girls that have been coerced into it, yeah, and young boys, but majority girls at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yes.
They are just basically there so that the doctors and surgeons can be trained. Basically,
Exactly. Guinea pigs,
that's what
100%.
it is. It's a giant experiment using real live people
Yep.
because there are no courses in medical schools for this.
Yep.
There are
Yep.
no university courses for them to go on, so they're having to learn on the job, right?
Yeah.
They're having to learn on the job.
Willing
These
participants
are
that
people.
have been captured and
These are
convinced.
people. Yeah, these are doctors who might have done a bit of facelifts
Yeah.
or a bit of boob jobs. That's all they've ever done, and now look what they've got to practice on now. Do you know what I mean? It's like Christmas has come for them, isn't it?
Yeah, and even if their surgeries mess up and go haywire or just have issues, which they almost always do, and I've heard of, countless stories of someone, having issues with their neo-vagina thing and going back to the clinic, and they have like bodyguards being like, get the fuck out of here. Like, they won't talk to you. They don't care about you.
And there's going to be very few law firms. We're all hoping that there's going to be a
Right.
lot of lawsuits, but
Right.
I wonder if there's going to be very, very few that are willing to touch this with a
That's
barge
exactly
pole.
what I've been thinking. I'm like, yes, there's going to be lawsuits, but who the hell is going to even come close to this to be, sure, I'll help
Yeah,
you out. I don't think
yeah,
they're not going to be able to find. I mean, maybe
yeah,
one, but what's the
yeah,
point? It's like, ooh, I
yeah.
don't
And
think that's going to happen.
all the money is on the other side, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's the other side in a lawsuit will have all the money, and it would just be, is that even going to be possible? I mean, the only hope against this lies with democracy, Lindsay. It lies with legislators. That's the only way we can push back against this. Individuals are sort of going to are being picked off one by one, aren't they? Basically,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. Yeah, so I've now really pinned my colours to the mast as a massive transphobe, haven't I, on this podcast?
I don't. That's not what I would call you. Whatever. Call me whatever you want. What? I live in biological reality. I don't care what you call me. It doesn't matter.
I think they've been trying to soften us up for all this stuff for a long time. I mean, there's been lots of Hollywood movies about
Yeah.
AI and going out into space and downloading human consciousness into robots and all this. Oh,
Yeah.
what a load
Yeah.
of nonsense that is. Are you kidding? I mean, Elon Musk's brain phone, children that are 5 years old now, by the time they're 10, they will have these things.
Yeah. The Neuralink thing or whatever.
This is happening. It's happening. You know, this is why I like Jennifer so much. She's been that one voice above the
Amazing.
parapet with this. Actually,
Yep.
she's been
So
terrific,
powerful.
and we need more and more people to realise what is actually going on. I mean, I've mentioned this about the climate change, the XR agenda to people I know in the Green movement, and they've kind of been really, but you can see the same message out there to young people. It doesn't really matter what you do with your body, does it? Because you're not going to have kids anyway. Because the world is going to fry. Do you see what I'm trying to say? It's
Yes, I
all feeding
absolutely do.
into the same mindset, isn't it?
Yes,
To convince them that it doesn't matter.
God, you've
You know.
really summarized it in a way that I haven't even really thought about, which is
Well,
amazing. You're blowing my mind.
perhaps it's probably because I've been a science fiction fan all my life. So lots of
Yeah.
science fiction. Yeah, lots of science fiction writers have covered this sort of thing. They've been writing about AI taking over the world and all that for decades. So it's not as if people haven't read about this sort of stuff. And it's like, yeah, where do you think these young billionaires have got their ideas from in the first place?
Exactly. Other people's minds were fantasies.
And I mean, we've got what are they doing? Artificial breast milk,
Oh
synthetic
God.
breast milk. the whole idea about uterus transplants into, and it won't be into men, it'll be into robots. Come on,
Yeah.
you know,
Why would they waste time? Yeah, exactly.
but the whole idea that it could be men is purely for the surgeons to experiment. You know, that's all that is.
Yep.
I do feel sorry for all these people. They are. I've said myself. I've said they are collateral damage. I've written this on Spinster. They are collateral damage in what's going on.
Yeah.
They have just been thrown to the wolves, so that all these surgeries can be perfected.
Yeah.
If they can ever be perfected, but you know, they think they can.
I don't think you can play God. I don't know. It's just all this shit not working, or I don't think anyone gets to play God. I think it's very egotistical, and it's always people with too much money and fantasy minds just wanting to create a better human. I'm like, well, that's just so egotistical to me. Like, what, you think you are the one person that can create a better human? But I'm like, the better human's going to be coming from the mind of a human. I'm like,
yeah, they're not trying to create a better human. This is like, they think this is the only answer to the climate change emergency. And this is how they've managed to convince the governments, because there is no other reason for governments to have been captured like this, except they've pitched that this is how we're going to save the human race, right? And this is how we're going to save you, and you, but not the mass of people out there who really, you only need as labourers, you know, you don't need as anything else. God. You know, and you know what I mean? And why now, only now are we seeing the big companies that run, you know, the public square? Why do we only now see in the last year all these people being thrown off social media? Whole groups of women's groups being thrown off Reddit. Why? Because people have started to get together and talk about all this stuff, and it's become more public knowledge, and it's out, and they don't want that, do they? They want to try and put the lid on it. They don't want people organising and talking about it and thinking what to do about it, you know?
Think for themselves and breaking up families, abolish families. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Like, just, it's tearing people apart. I think it's obviously intentional. If you're able to think for yourself and talk with other people that think like you, then you're going to be able to maybe fight against it or whatever. So of course it makes sense to split people apart. I mean, even, you know, one of my female friends, so I considered her a feminist at the time, and I wasn't a feminist, and she's, I mean, I keep bringing that up, but obviously it affects me. You know, I just can't believe it's like women separating each other. Just not even willing to listen. Just to listen. It's crazy. It's crazy.
But it is women who are the only hope for this. Women. It is only women who, because it's only women who care about children.
Yeah.
It's only women who care about children, and where the children are going to keep their whole natural bodies and live natural, fulfilling lives. You know, it is only women who care about that. Maybe I've been sounding very you know, I've been all doom and gloom about this. I do see a lot of hope, you know, in the way that women are coming together, and you might say I've already spoken about a massive conspiracy theory. You know, I have not got conspiracy theories about the COVID pandemic, but I do have conspiracy theories about the lockdown. The lockdowns are definitely being used to stifle freedom of speech and to stop people getting out on the streets and protesting. And the left in inverted commas, have just lied down and died for this. You know, where's all the union organising that we've had for the last couple of 100 years, guys? Where's it all got? No, you know, they want us locked down even more. I think we do have more. I think we're more sceptical in the UK than perhaps you guys are. We've got, there's a website called Lockdown Skeptics here, and people are, and they just you know. So we do have we are more sceptical over here, and it's not about there's no pandemic. It's not about that. It's not about people shouldn't get vaccinated. It's about how governments have just thrown democracy and free speech out the window because of this.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I'm skeptical. I don't know about the rest of Americans, but
the right to get out and meet and have free protests. You know, that is an inalienable human right. You know, That is a human right. I mean, Posey Parker is another of my heroes, and people attack her. Actually, they even attack her on Spinster. People even have a go at Posey on Spinster, and she's accused of being right wing and all the rest of it.
God,
and you know, and I've said, well, how many other people have actually put themselves in harm's way for the rest of us? How many others have actually stood up and got arrested and on our behalf, and you know, have to endure all this hate on our behalf? How many women? How many people are doing that? Very, very few.
I'm really tired of the right and left talk thing. It's like, oh, that has nothing to do with it. We're talking about women, and like, I hate that that's the focus. Stopping us from even focusing on the real issue here. If you're going to be like, oh, this article about, you know, all this is on a conservative website. I'm like, who cares? Like, they're the only people that are able to put it out. Yeah. Oh, it's so unfortunate.
I mean, there is more and more little websites, little podcasts like your own, which are kind of sprouting up all over the place. And the more the merrier, actually. It's when people are in one great conglomerate that they can all be cancelled at once, isn't it? You know, but being small and mobile and having sort of hundreds of different little protest groups all over the world, that might be the way to go.
Yep.
You know, so we, you know, there is hope. There is hope, Lindsay. It's not.
I know.
Quite as bad as perhaps I was saying earlier, you know.
I mean, it's good to mention the reality of it, but you know, I can't sit here and be all just me finding all these groups online, whether it's over at Spinster or Facebook groups, which I never thought I'd find, you know.
Well, you and me have come into this in about the same time period, really, haven't you? The last year or so. It's the same with me, and we are just. Whoa, finding out about all this stuff, and everywhere you look, there's something else, isn't there? You know?
Every day. Every day it's a new peak. I swear. It's just once you start paying attention to it, you can't put that genie back in the bottle, whatever.
No, but what I would suggest is that women don't get obsessed with the thing they think is the worst thing, which is, you know, these very violent, homophobic, misogynist men. And the death threats. Try not to get obsessed with that, and see it in the bigger picture of the general attack on freedom of speech.
Yes.
Because that way you'll see where your allies are. You'll find your allies who are campaigning on other aspects of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. You see, if you just sort of, oh my God, I'm in this little corner and all I can see all around me is just internet trolls and. Gosh, you know, how can you sleep at night? You know, you need to kind of look outside that and see what kind of fight back other people are engaged in.
Exactly. Focus on what you can do, big or small.
Yeah.
It's the only thing you can do. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if there's anything else you wanted to add, we can absolutely talk about it. I don't want to keep it for too long.
I don't want to. No, I think one thing in one podcast is probably enough, Lindsay.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, I could talk for like 3 hours. Just, you know, I don't know when to cut it off, basically, because this topic is so important.
Well, I expect people will, if people make any comments on this, they'll probably say that woman's she's mad. You know, where'd she get all these ideas from?
I don't think so. No way. Where do you get it from? I don't know. Living through life and seeing what is going on. I'm like, what? Come on. Well, I gotta say thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Just every one of these podcasts I've been having with women is just amazing. I'm kind of.
Well, I'm not just speaking about this. It's in my cartoons. Yeah, it's in my artwork, and the most recent one I've done is being used by some gay people who are trying to get gay men to walk away from Stonewall, and tried. And it shows a little robot family. Like a mother robot with two little baby robots, and this is obviously in the far future, and they're in a museum of Earth, and there are two cabinets in front of them with two skeletons, and one says gays and one says lesbians, and the mother robot is saying nobody knows how these ancient species of humans went extinct, why they went extinct. So, you know, I'm trying to produce art that people can use in their actual campaigns. And a cartoon can say something very quickly very immediately, which maybe 1,000 words of text cannot say.
Exactly.
You know,
Extremely powerful. And to me,
yeah.
I mean, it definitely works. Gets the point across. Well, thank you so
Mm.
much. It's been an absolute
Okay.
treat and honor. Thank you,
Oh,
Stella.
thank you. Well, thank
Well,
you.
check out. Where can we find you on the interwebs, the internet website and whatnot, or
Um,
anything?
well, I no, only Spinster. At Spinster, you can
But
connect
you
with
have your own
me.
website, right?
I have my own
Yeah.
website. Do you want to put that up under the
Yeah, I
video
will.
when you?
Sometimes I'll, if you
Yeah,
have like
when you've
social
got. Yeah,
media, just ask
yeah,
if you have
yeah.
it.
And I might as well just hold my book up, which
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
end of last year,
Wow.
2020, the year we were all
Awesome.
cancelled,
That's
which is my
fantastic.
cartoon review of last year.
Oh my
And
God, that's great.
plenty of GC cartoons in there, I can assure you.
Oh, I'm gonna snag one of those. Heck yeah.
And
All right.
you can order that. You can order that online
Oh yeah.
through any of the big bookstores. Okay.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'll put that definitely on the captions or whatever, or the description box. All right. Well, thank you, Stella. Catch you guys on the flip side.
Yep. Okay. Bye bye,
Sweet.
Lindsay.